Welcome everyone for our livecast symposium, first of the day at the Media Architecture Biennale in Amsterdam. I'm really thrilled to be moderating this cross-disciplinary discussion we're having today about connecting cinemas, bringing together researchers, lecturers, and curators working in the spheres of cinema and media. I would like to very much also find out who are you, dear audience. So I would really encourage you to share where you are, where you're joining from here in the chat. We'll be talking today about ways in which cinemas can become hubs for cultural innovation and how can they embrace and enhance the sphere of media. And I would like to start this by sharing a personal story as I will be guiding you through this event today. So I come from Poland and I didn't have a DVD player, video player, computer at home. I loved cinema, got a job in an art house cinema and was watching films. With this money, one fine day, I got a computer, played a DVD. It was a super long art house film and I felt like I really need to use the bathroom. So I ran to the bathroom, came back, and then I realized I can actually switch the video, play the video, stop the video, and suddenly I had this agency with interacting with this medium, which is film. And I think this tension between the lean back of cinema and lean forward of playing games is something which is a very interesting intersection, which we'll be exploring today and seeing how can we combine this two, the playfulness, the immersiveness of media art and the content, the experience that comes with cinema. So, I'm joining as part of the Catalyst. It's a boutique agency in Berlin. We're working with this sort of projects at the intersection of creative industries and digital technology. And I think my last question for you in this introduction would be to ask you, my dear audience, when was the last time when you had this experience of actually watching a film, leaning back, and not having the agency of interrupting the broadcast whenever you want to? Was it before the pandemic, during the pandemic? Have you been to a cinema lately? So I totally encourage you to share these experiences with us on the chat. So we would like to start this conversation with a short introduction by Susa Pop. She's an international curator, cultural entrepreneur, lecturer, artistic director, and the co-founder of the Public Art Lab. She and of the Urban Media Art Academy and Connected Cinemas Network. Susa is interested in researching translocal platforms and networks for creative city making through urban media art with an eye on community building, citizen science, and economists. So we're very, very happy to have you here, Susa, with us. And I would like you to introduce the project Connecting Cinemas. How did it start? And what are the goals of us being here today?
Yes, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So thank you very much for this kind introduction. And I want to welcome you, of course, to the Symposium Connecting Cinemas in Rural Areas at the Media Architecture Biennial. The personal story behind this project is that we already realized the project, a large-scale European-funded project connecting cities. And together with Caroline Hude from Kleine Neue Kammerspiele, we had the idea that what we can do outside the cinema, connecting people and places, we can try to connect the screens, and then this idea of connecting cinemas was developed. So, but let me start. First of all, a big thank you to Professor Martijn de Waal and his team for hosting the symposium, and which is a really great platform, the Media Architecture Biennial, for projects and formats that bring different stakeholders together to think about the urgencies of our time with a biennial theme of futures implied. Connecting Cinemas is a pilot project in cooperation with 4 rural cinema partners. I think you will all meet them this afternoon. Neue Kammerspiele in Kleinmachnow in Germany, Fortress of Culture in Šibenik, Croatia, Amza Pelea Cinema in Rasno in Romania, and Cinestar in Veria, Greece, and 4 creative action research labs, M2C Lab in Bremen, Civic Interaction Group of the Amsterdam University, and Care Affairs of Brussels, and Public Art Lab from 6 different European regions, funded by the media program of Creative Europe. So the opportunity of the project is to rethink the cinema as an innovation lab and cultural center in this cross-disciplinary partnership of art house cinema makers and creative action research labs. How can we find new ways of cinema making to reach a younger audience, and new ways of cinema making to sustain, especially in rural areas? So with the Connecting Cinemas project, we want to create bridges between the disciplines with a common program around the curatorial strands of connect, engage, and entertain, which means connecting the audiences of the cinemas and engaging them with the local communities in neighborhood-led cinema, and find new forms of entertaining with a young audience. However, the first period of the project was very much characterized by the lockdown of the cinemas. They were all closed, and the partners had to connect digitally through Zoom meetings and live streams and social media channels. So in a way, they experienced new tools and new outreach to online communities, which might have an impact for their futures. But many, many good ideas and approaches have been developed by the students and the cinema makers around the 3 pillars of connect, engage, and entertain in an action research process and with the partners. So hopefully we can experience them in the second period of the project. I want to welcome you this afternoon session to hear your perspectives about the potentials and opportunities about connecting cinemas, and thank you for joining this symposium.
Thank you, Zuza, for being here with us, and thanks to all the panelists who are with us. So I'm super happy to welcome Clémentine Deboeuf from the KIE in Brussels, Valeska Hanel from the Neue Kammerspiele Cinema in Germany, Mihai Dragomir from Amza Pelea Cinema in Rașnov in Romania, Martin Deval here sitting in next to me. You will see him in a second from the, yes, hi Martin.
Hey there.
From the Civic Interaction Design, and Martin Koplin from M2C Institute. So I'm super happy that we're heading toward this very interesting conversation. And I would really like not only the 6 names on the screen to be part of this conversation, but I would really like this to be a more general dialogue. So I also encourage anyone sitting in front of the computer to ask questions, to contribute, to share thoughts. We're talking about connecting today, so it would be awesome to also connect with each of us present for this conversation. So Clémentine, hi.
Hello, hi everyone from Brussels.
Hi.
Nice to be here.
Clémentine, you work at the KIE, European Affairs in Belgium, and KIE is an agency for international policy. It's an international policy design research center, and it specializes in culture, creative sectors, and sports. And your role is being responsible for KIE's communications, and you're managing the communication and dissemination activities of EU-funded projects. And as far as I know, your favorite cinema is Vendôme in Brussels Ixelles, right?
Exactly, yes.
I think we have a video about this. I think, yes, starting. So before we jump into talking about KEA's role of cinemas, I would like you to just tell us a few words about the film itself, where it comes from. And then I think it would be great to address one of the questions that I also saw was already incoming in the chat before the session started, which is about the shifting role of cinemas in the shifting media landscape. So the floor is yours, Clémentine.
Thank you very much for the invitation. So KEA is part of the Connecting Cinemas in Rural Areas partnership. We are doing the evaluation and accompanying the partners in learning from each other and developing activities together. This is our role. And in this session, I will talk about indeed, the role of cinemas in today's very peculiar context, but also in an environment that has been changing very much for the past decades. And to do this, I chose a picture that you can see in the background, or I don't know where you are, somewhere on your screen. And it's a picture coming from a book, which is called Cinema Makers. And it comes out of a tour that was done by two French guys around Europe, meeting cinemas in small cities and learning how these cinemas adapt to the changing environment. So I thought it was really on the point for this first part of the discussion to talk about how the cinema, what space is the cinema in the city or in the village, in the small city, wherever they are. And I think in this environment of changing consuming patterns and watching films online or series online or on your mobile phone, there is a new role for the cinema as a place for experience, as a place for coming together of sociability, which we very much missed actually during the COVID pandemic. We were able maybe to watch films at home, having this agency that you mentioned in the introduction, but this place of coming together in the black box and sharing emotions on the spot, this is something that is very specific to the cinemas. But in addition to this role of sharing the love for films and filmmaking in Europe, I think the cinemas are taking very much a new role in the urban space. They are developing also new activities, new services. They are opening up to the cities, for instance, with other activities like exhibitions, or maybe they have a bar or restaurant, or they show some other performances. They invite people for talks. So it's very much about coming together in the same space and having a place for meeting, for discussion, and having a place for integrating these new technologies. So there is a blurring of the lines between maybe some media and some content, with cinemas showing various genres, showing series or showing video games, enabling people to play with the big screen. So I think there is very much space for cinemas to evolve and find their place with the new media, and not the new media being exclusive, mutually exclusive, but the cinema experience. I think it's very much interesting to look at how these two integrate. So I think other media can be an entry point for films, for the younger audience, for instance. So the cinemas can be this interface between genres, between generations, while being such a creative spot in the city where they're located.
Totally, and I think also one of the strengths that we have here in Europe is the European context that comes along. And I was wondering, what are the opportunities that cinema have in this context? And if you could tell us more about the role of the cinema in Europe.
Yeah, sure. The European context is something we are very fond of and very much following at KEA, because we work internationally and we work especially with European institutions and European cities, European cultural and creative entrepreneurs and institutions around Europe. So I think for me, there are two ways in which the European context influences or shapes cinemas today. There is policy support to the industry. Of course, as Susa mentioned, our project is funded through the media program of Creative Europe. And this program supports networking, supports skills, supports the circulation of films in Europe so that audiences in Poland can watch a Spanish film, or people in Sweden can watch a Croatian film. So this is very important in the way the industry, the audiovisual industry is supported, and is also now supporting the innovation, the competitiveness of the sector. And on the other side, there is the cultural context, because cinema is European heritage, and it's also a strong contemporary creation with a long history of independent films and filmmaking, and big film studios as well. So it's an ever-changing stories, and there are new developments like the streaming, the augmented reality, for instance, and this is part of the history of cinema in Europe. So again, there are some strong trends coming from the outside, coming from new big international players, but the creation and the creativity of the European cinema scene is ever changing and ever evolving, and it's what makes it so special. So I also wanted to say one last thing about our project and what I think about the European context. It's really, cinema is really something that brings Europeans together. And I chose this picture that you can see, which is from the Lombardy cinema in Prizren in Kosovo. And Prizren has become, it's a small city, and it has become a big place for documentary film, with a big DocuFest festival every year. So it's really, Europeans love cinema and the other way around. And I think this is something that is still there for a long time, even with the COVID pandemic.
Thank you. I would really like to hear from the audience if you're coming from different places. I know we are in this very luxurious situation of an online call where we can join from everywhere in the world. So it would be awesome to hear from you. If you have any thoughts or any contributions or any questions, we would really love to invite you to comment on this. And as you said, Clémentine, thanks very much for this overview of the European situation. You were talking about connecting with audiences, and I think it's a very important part of what the Connected Cinemas project is. And it's about overcoming geographic distance as well. It's about collaborations. It's about common challenges and goals. And I would like now to ask for the next video, which introduces very well the red thread of the project. So with all this love, we are joined by Valeska Hassel, who is the programming chief at the Neue Kammerspiele Cinema in Germany, as well as by Mihai Dragomir, who is managing the transition of a cinema into a cultural hub in Brașov in Romania. Hi, Valeska. Hi, Mihai.
Hello.
We're super happy that you're joining us for this conversation, which is about the ways cinema can embrace and benefit and co-create technologies and media. So, Valeska, if you could tell us a bit more about this. How does cinema combine with technology across the creative Connected Cinemas network?
Yeah, well, first of all, cinema has always been between state-of-the-art technology and content and nostalgia. And the digitalization itself of cinema is a very important part in cinema history. You didn't get heavy 35mm packages anymore. You got digital cinema packages. By now, some distributors even offer to download them. So one of the elements of even being flexible with the cinema is this step in the history. Cinemas nowadays work a lot with digital means for communication, for the marketing of the films, but also, like Clémentine already mentioned, the networking becomes more and more important as cinema is endangered by other competitors. You need to build networking, which is what we are, and without any digital means, email, social media, newsletters, that would not be possible across borders. Also, I want to say one thing that's very good for cinema to get people engaged in programming, which would be polls. You can get people to be part of the programming and hopefully reach a younger audience.
Mihai, I think you are reaching a variety of audiences at the Russian of Cinema. So if you could tell us, please, more about this project and about also your role in the network of connecting cinemas, and what does it bring to you in your situation, which is super interesting.
Hello to everyone. So I'm in the south of Transylvania, a small town nearby the Dracula Castle, so very famous character in the movies. So we are in a small town, as I said. We are a small cinema in a historic building since 1924. And we faced the same experience like most of the traditional cinemas in Romania. After the fall of the communism, most were closed or transformed in clubs or warehouses, and in the same time their audiences disappeared. So nowadays we also face the very easy access to online movies, legal or illegal, which is also a very important problem, and nearby the big towns with the multiplexes. Since last year, we started an initiative because I'm representing an NGO. We started an initiative together with the local municipality to reinvent the cinema hall, the building, and to restore the life and the meaning of this building. And first of all, the first important question for us was, what does successful cinema look like in the future? Just a movie theater with or without modern technology, I don't think is enough. So we have to bring more. So we started to work with a famous architect in Romania, which was born in our town. And new spaces will be available in the next 2 or 3 years. A bookshop, a coffee shop, a space for different events. Because only screening movies is not enough, as I said before. So this process involves both infrastructure, investments, but also a lot of content design. And that's why we are happy to be in this network of the Connecting Cinemas, because it's important to us to learn from different other partners from their experience, and also to share content and to produce content. And we're happy after a bad or a hard year like 2020, we are happy that last month in May, our German partners managed to produce the first Connecting Cinemas Lounge, which is a new format which we'd like to develop.
And I understand that this is also a great, the Connecting Cinema Lounge is also a great way to see how can we use technology and how can cinema, which is a traditional old medium, how can cinema embrace new technologies and different ways to reach to audiences, which I think is a very important angle. So Valeska, if you could tell us a bit more about this event and how did you work with tech?
Okay, well, the Connecting Cinema Lounge it had two things at the side. The one was the pandemic limitations we had without audience. And the other one was the offerings, new technologies held for us to somehow cope, to somehow make a good choice. And both of these things really influence the creative process of what can we do to take cinema to another level and still do something that has to do with culture and the space. And so we came up between the two opposites of nostalgia of the cinema on the one side and technology, state of the art on the other side, to put a European saloon, like a cultural saloon, on stage, a debate, to open the debate room. Cinema always has been a space for critical thought, different perspective, empathy for minorities, perspectives on power and government, and to get like a debate like this in an interactive live stream on a platform that it streamed through our website, Connecting Cinemas EU. And you can still watch it there. It was lively streamed, it was interactive, we had a chat, and we had all our partners at some point there. And the red thread video you saw actually was a theme for the Connecting Cinema Lounges, because our first theme was distance, and this video was the visual of that. And so now we have like an archive. We started in Germany, but our partners like Šibenik now, and then Romania and Greece, fortunately with an audience, they can do their project, their interpretation of their lounge, but also film it, maybe live stream it, maybe not, but put it on that platform. And in that way, you can have an archive, you have a time document, and it'll grow.
Mihai, how do you see yourself in the future? Because you're in a very privileged position of building something from scratch. Do you think you will embrace things such as the playfulness that comes from video games, for instance, or the immersiveness which comes with VR, and all the experiences that you've had with the other partners? Do you think that you will embrace this in the work on in Rashnov?
Yes, of course, we are open to as many interesting proposals. And in fact, we had a lot of interaction with the students in Amsterdam since the beginning of this project. And it was all the time very interesting this meeting place of the ideas. So the students always came with different technology and ideas, and us, the cinemas, sometimes were very not critical, but stop them to invent too much, because for us it's very important to not lose the let's say the experience of the audience directly with the movie, and too much technology can sometimes be not dangerous, but can isolate people. And our art cinemas try to bring people to share their experiences and to improve their experience during watching a movie. So for us, technology, of course, it's part of the future. We can't discuss about the future without technology. And that's why we started to work in our community, to work a lot of the teenagers, with the kids, with the young people. And also we want to bring them in the cinema hall to even to have a regular classroom in the cinema room. We would like to have in the future, they become producers for us. So they will produce content for our cinema.
That's a very interesting shift in the traditional model of the work of cinema. But I think there's also another shift which is happening, which is the agency of the audience. The same way that I was pressing this computer button and suddenly the DVD was stopping to play. I think there's a lot of agency that comes with media. And I was wondering about this approach, this change from the curator being the the one who's deciding what is going to be what is going to be on display, to more to a position in which we are embracing the public, the social sphere in the programming of the cinema. And I think this is also a change that we are seeing, and something that we can learn from other audiovisual industries than cinema, that are such as YouTube communities or other spaces, which are way more democratic in a way than cinema, right?
Yes, of course. So that's why we try to organize all kind of events in our cinema plays, not only screenings, but also different small communities which are coming to share some pictures, to share some videos to be produced. And in this way, we try to be, as I said in the beginning, to be a meeting place for our community. So not only the classical cinema as we remember in the past.
So Valeska, how do you see the future of cinema in this context, in the digital context? Do you think we're going to be changing things?
That's a difficult question. It's always asked. I think that there will be a lot of things that will be tried out to the point where you can maybe be with different people in one room and see different movies. But I do also think that the old nostalgic cinema of watching films and sharing and discussing them afterwards will remain as well. It's undeniable, I believe. That doesn't mean that every cinema will survive. The more it has to offer, the more it is a cultural hub, the more it is the social center, the more it'll survive. But of course, I don't know. I'm not sure that every cinema will survive. But I do believe that it will. But I do believe that movies will always be seen. And like, for example, you have the 3D thing, and it's not so much on the rise anymore. A lot of people don't even like 3Ds. It's like a hype. So there'll be hypes. Some of them stay, some of them leave, but cinema in itself will stay in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of these changes through the past. The cinema was supposed to cinemas were supposed to close when TV came in, and then we all thought that there's going to be new ways of seeing films. So I think there's for sure a space that you're exploring through this project, which is between the media space and the traditional cinema space. And indeed, what you are mentioning, this experience of the audience, what Van Genep was calling this rite de passage, that you're going in a special place and you're not watching films in between your emails and your whatever else you're doing on the computer. I think it's a wonderful space. So I'm really looking forward to all the cinemas to reopen everywhere in the world after the pandemic. So we'll get back to these points at the end and we'll have a discussion. And if I'm checking here, I have a Slack with some incoming questions, but I think we've addressed everything so far. So if you have any more questions to the panelists, would be awesome to hear from you. I'm talking to you, dear audience. And I would like now to present two more speakers. One of them is sitting right in front of me live in Amsterdam. Hi, Martijn.
Hey, welcome.
And the other one is online joining us from Bremen. Hi, Martin. So, Martin, you are the founder of the M2C Institute for Applied Media Technology and Culture. The M2C fuses the perspective of applied media science in informatic, organizational development, and culture studies. And you curate media art events and are a lecturer for digital media communication and technology. And you're joining us live from Bremen, right?
Yes, hello, and thank you very much for this introduction. And well, to make it simple, we do something with media. That's right.
And we have another person doing something with media sitting in front of me. And this is Martijn de Waal, who's the general chair of the Media Architecture Biennale that we are in. And you're a lecturer professor leading the research group of civic interaction design. You have a background in journalism, media studies, practical philosophy, and you are exploring the connection between these disciplines and the field of design.
That's right.
Wonderful having you here for this interdisciplinary conversation. So we're talking about digital, interactive, innovative media, which can change cinema, which can reach out to audiences, which are changing the cultural landscape. But I think what we've learned through the past year is basically that the most important tissue is the social tissue and the social environment that surrounds us. So I was wondering, how can all these experiments spark social change? And it's a question for you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in very much actual, and we're talking here when we talk about social change, you can, you don't mean a general revolution, I guess, but local maybe change processes in the social. And I would like to give you one example for how to spark social change. And it's in general said to enable people to interact and use digital media for better and more actively access to the cultural sphere, including cinemas, of course, and the places of cinemas, films, etc. So in the use case of our digital impact labs here in Bremen that we developed in 3 parts of town, in the less developed parts of town, and they play the role of a catalyst for social innovation and integrated development of the urban environment. So it's not about here that we bring the people to the digital transformation coming from industry at the first point, but we allow people to find their own way through our changing life environment and better access and better create own cultural resources. So digital media and tools here should support people to successfully become active in the field of cultural and societal participation, and in actively participate in the, as for example, as co-designers or designers in the cultural sphere, and or in the social cultural evolution of their quarter, their town. Because that supports an integrated development between the social and the professional cultural sphere. Yeah.
This is part of the fun of talking online, that we have a certain lag and sometimes the connection is not that smooth as we would like to. But I think also technology, besides this moment when you're trying to talk to someone online, is also a big asset, and it's something which can bring a lot to the culture sphere. As you were mentioning, it's something that you're working a lot. And I think you have a video and also a short case study that we were discussing. You could share with us that would maybe make it more concrete what we have been discussing, right? So what was this video about? Could you tell us more about this project?
All right. So we are connected with the universities and art universities here in Bremen, and some of our students here work for now 1 semester in for the Connecting Cinemas project, and developed different apps for how to interact. And the interesting case is that it was all about horizontal communication, about co-design or feedback between and communication between the cinema, so the screen, and the audience. Why? Because the young people that design these things they are very strong in this kind of new digital cultural use of and development of communication processes. And this is something to be brought in by also to get linked and bridged between, let's say, the traditional or old culture of film and the cinematic culture, and then to link between these young audiences and the culture, because it's not only their culture, but they enhance the mainstream culture as well. And I would say it's very good to listen to them. And for example, there were also some projects where the audience was enabled to collaboratively paint on the cinema screen and things like that. So there were different approaches, and I guess we should start more and more to listen to them and look how can we in the cinemas integrate this kind of interaction processes. This does not mean that to watch a movie is not great itself, but there is a lot to do of how to connect the cinema with the urban sphere, with the cultural moments, the social environment around. Here we should listen to the new kinds of cultural moments coming from very often young people and their ideas.
So I'm not such a young person, and when you're saying collectively painting on the screen, what does this mean?
This means that they developed an app, for example, where the audience was asked collaboratively using the mobile phone in the cinema space, picking up a color, and then starting to paint. For example, this can also be a quest that there is a term from a movie, and you now need to the audience need to find out what it is and paint this or whatever. It can be very playful and gameful, and maybe even a competition between the one side of the audience and the seats, the people on the other side of the cinema. So it's about to be playful and creative. And these are just little apps that symbolize somehow the wish to do so, for to bring these things into the cinema space. And of course, there are many other, and I know from Martijn, we will listen to more kind of these projects quite soon. But I guess that for the cinemas, we should look into it to bridge the cinemas with the moments of daily life and to connect them with the people around. So not to see them only as people sitting in the cinema to watch movies, but to allow them to bring their culture into the space of the cinema as well, additionally. And these are little tools that play around with kinds of that.
I think, as you're saying, bringing this agency, but also the diversity of each person being different, is something which definitely can help also spark some change. And we have also an incoming question from the audience, which I will read to you. It seems to me that we are in an era of a transition from the passive to the experience, cinema, TV, to the interactive experience. I believe there is room for both and will be always both. But I'm interested in any thoughts on how they might combine, expanding the experience, perhaps AR and the cinema. So I think it's a very interesting question, and we are luckily having Martijn with us at the table. And I guess in the past months you have been exploring this. So just to Yes. So if you could just tell us a bit more about this project, which you have been running with your students. And then I guess we'll have some examples in a moment of some of the projects, right?
Yeah, thanks. I'm working here at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. The research group is called Civic Interaction Design, but we work a lot together with the students from the Master Digital Design. And with them, we explore all kinds of future prototypes for digital and hybrid technologies. And actually, I was thinking before you asked somebody, what is your favorite cinema? And then I was just thinking for myself, what is my favorite cinema? And then I came probably to the Castro Cinema, which is in San Francisco. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's this beautiful old Art Deco palace. It's huge. And it has a Wurlitzer organ. So when you enter, it's this beautiful environment and you're there and you're see all these decorations, and then you have this organ and there's this guy playing the organ, and it's hydraulic, so at the end sort of the organ goes slowly down and then the magic of the movie happens, right? And I think why is it such a nice place? It's because of this feeling of togetherness, right? So it's this ritual. Like you said before, it's nice to watch movies at home. You can press play and you can pause it if you want, but it's also nice to experience visual culture together in an atmosphere. And I think if you translate that to now, what we're seeing is, of course, is that this visual culture also takes a lot of new types of shapes, right? For instance, here in the Netherlands, we've seen some new museums opening that are doing interactive experiences, kind of in the sort of what, for instance, STEM Lab from Japan is doing. So you're in these rooms and you have these huge screens around you and they interact and they react, but it's still something that you experience together. We have also museums that's starting to set up virtual reality, which you could in theory experience at home, but still it's nice to experience it in an environment that is also especially designed for that experience. So I think what you said before, the sort of this more passive experience of stories and this interactive experience, I think they can still come together. And I think cinemas can really play an important role in that. And with our students, we did some experiments to trying to figure out what could that look like actually in the cinema space. And we brought a little movie clip about the Cinecubes, which is one of the experiments that the students did. So I think it would be nice to have a look at that.
Let's have a look at this.
So my name is Robin, and together with Nicoletta, Odin, and Simona, we created Cinecubes as part of our Master's Digital Design at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. In this 6-week project, we got the mission to create a playful digital media installation to engage a younger audience around the local cinema. Our design question was, how might we connect people between the age of 25 and 35 years old to each other and the local cinema?
Cinecube is a set of multiple cubes, actually, that can be placed inside the black box. Each cube has a sensor which is triggered when it detects movement. Once it detects movement, coordinates will be sent over the Wi-Fi to a digital audio station, and then we'll play the track.
The music can be related to the movie you're currently watching. So, for example, if a new film is coming out and you have to premiere, then you can have this song matching the movie you're watching. We saw that there was a gap between entering the black box and actually watching the movie. Before the movie even starts, if advertising is starting, you're just sitting around and you're not sure what you're going to do with your time. So this filling in that gap of not really knowing what to do.
The Cinecube belongs specifically within the black box of the cinema hall. Since the cubes are placed on top of each chair, the moviegoers will be forced to take a cube and then move it so that they can sit. That was the trigger that we consider would have them start playing with the cube, start moving it. So yeah, the end goal was to create this kind of shared choreography within the cinema hall where every moviegoer would sort of individually play with the cube, but then collectively enjoy the music created. We decided to explore the topic of connectedness by having moviegoers collaboratively create a piece of song. As per our research, we found out that creating something collaboratively in an urban space was highly gratifying. Even though it's indoors, the cinema hall remains a public urban space.
So this is a very interesting project. How did you? What was the story behind this project? How did you work on this project? How did the students come to this? What was the collaboration with the cinema? How did this all come about? If you could tell us.
Well, first of all, I have to give credit to Pamela Nelson and Katie Bernard from the research team, and of course all the people from the Master Digital Design who intensively worked with the students. And yeah, we started with the Connecting Cinemas project, and of course their question of how can we use these new technologies to engage audiences, to entertain them, and what else can cinemas do than showing movies? And we started to explore that, and we came up with 4 or 5 different things that cinemas could do that were related to sort of the site where digital media could experience.
What were the spheres?
Well, the first one was, we called it Inside the Black Box, and I think the example that you just saw was an example of that. So you're entering into a gallery space, a space that is really devoted to experiencing a media product, right? So you design something that is either interacting with the media product that you were seeing. So here the students were thinking of, okay, can we do something where the people who sit in the audience have this experience of being an audience together, interacting with each other by giving them these cubes, and each cube is its own instrument, and the way you turn it determines the sound that comes. So you collaboratively can sort of make a composition, and of course you can play with that. Sort of it's the new James Bond that's coming out. You can sort of do something with the James Bond soundtrack, etc., etc. So that was sort of inside the black box, and we started to exploring that. But we also thought there was also other sides that cinemas could play a role. The second one that we determined was inside the lobby. So it's the place where you congregate before and after the movie, which is sort of the social place where you have a drink. Well, first of all, you come in and you buy your ticket, or you wait until the person that you had a date with also appears. You buy a ticket. Afterwards, you sit down, you buy a drink. And there we were thinking of designing pieces, and if we have time, we can show a movie or part of that movie as well. Something that you can show in the lobby, which is more like a conversation piece, right? So it's there, it doesn't take your full attention, but if it does, you can have a look at it and we can start a conversation about it, or it could actually talk to us and ask us to do, like, have a small input. And then the third one, was actually sort of moving outside of the theater, also making a more direct relation even to media architecture, where we saw that there were lots of digital media projects going on in the city or on the facade of cinemas or other buildings. And these can be projections, or they can also be interactive installations. If I can briefly name 2 that we came across in research, and that actually came out of projects, I think that Suza Pop also curated earlier. For instance, there's this artistic project called Office Cleaning by Nika Radic, and she shows on a blind facade a movie or a film clip which actually shows you people cleaning the offices inside that building, right? So if you don't really pay attention, it almost looks like now the office or the building has a window, and all of a sudden you see the people who are cleaning that place. And of course, that is bringing out the people that are usually invisible because they do their work.
We're saying cheers to all the tech team, which is working here with us. Thank you.
Absolutely, and making that visible, right? So is it video art? Is it cinema? But it's something that's not inside the black box, but it's in the city. Or a more interactive piece that I've always really liked is Urban Alphabets from Susan Meissner. And there she asks actually people to go out into the city and with their mobile phone take pictures of letters that they see in the public space around them, right? So the signage on a window or a neon sign, or maybe a graffiti that's sprayed somewhere. And then all those letters, they become an alphabet, and that alphabet then is projected on, again, a blind facade. And what I really like about that project is that it really asks you to sort of re-examine your neighborhood, to look at it in a way that you don't really do, because you don't really pay a lot of attention to fonts, maybe unless you're a font designer, and that all those fonts together somehow paint, give you a couleur locale, right, of what are sort of the local taste or letters that are being used. So I'm just giving these examples to say, I think there could be a role for cinemas in these, right, sort of in the black box, in the lobby, in the city, maybe even moving into the digital space. And with the students, we started exploring that, and we did experiments in different spaces, and the one you just saw was an experiment for inside the black box.
We're just talking about fonts and lettering and imaging. So I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So if you could see the second video, maybe not the whole of it, but the first minute, 40 seconds would be great.
I'm Joey, and together with Miru, Steven and Sophie from the Master Digital Design, we worked on the Connecting Cinemas project for the past 20 weeks. The goal of this project is to explore how we could extend the experience of going to the cinema and foster feelings of understanding, empathy and connectedness between the visitors. Through our design question, we were wondering how we might create awareness for climate change and the impact on daily life. So our ultimate goal was to find out how we could enable visitors to explore their impact, not only in the world, but also on a local spot like Amsterdam. And it's not only for individuals, but also in a collective matter.
Well, the experience belongs in a gallery space inside the cinema. And as the participants move around the space, they trigger different scenes of the painting.
There's multiple paths you can choose. You can either way walk to the left and choose for the we change scenario, or you can pick another path, which is in this case the right, and go for the climate change scenario.
We change scenario, it will depict more renewable energies, greeneries, and a car-free Amsterdam. When they enter a zone linked to climate change, the painting will depict more trash and cars, and therefore the climate will change.
So this is another example of the students' project. Would you like to, the video goes for a few more minutes, so, but if you could just tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so here was another project that was more as a conversation piece. So it's a picture of the Amsterdam, canals, of course, but if you walk to the left or to the right, different scenarios will unfold. So if you walk more to the right, you will see it's getting actually hotter, there is more trash there, more cars, less green space. If you walk to the left, you see solar panels, wind turbines emerging, etc., etc. And you could either experience it, as they said, sort of in the black box in a sort of a gallery environment, but you could also imagine this could be in the lobby, right? And then at first you may not even notice it's interactive, but then you walk past it and you say, hey, I see something changing. So you start playing a little bit with that. And what I like about it is that also the changes, they're quite subtle, right? So you don't immediately see them. So it becomes kind of we can sort of start discussing that. Hey, I see something changing. Oh, look there, something is changing. Oh, what is it that's changing? Why is that change being made? So this is an attempt of creating an interactive experience that could be used in a cinema environment. It's sort of an interactive piece of visual culture that allows people to trigger a debate, and this time also about an important local political issue, climate change.
I think also if we're talking climate change, maybe we should also all give a thought to the fact that playing a 35mm print in the cinema compared to the power and energy which is used by all the Netflix algorithms trying to calculate the best combination, the best recipe for our media addiction. I think it's also part of the change, and this good old traditional mechanical medium, which was cinema, had a very different environmental impact. So I think it's also a space to reflect on this. And talking about reflection, I think we're in a very privileged role of having you, the chair of the Media Architecture Biennale, here at the table, and we are talking about connecting cinemas, about this interdisciplinary approach that you have also in your practice and in your curriculum. So I was thinking, we were just mentioning all these industries. We were mentioning museums a lot. We were mentioning galleries a lot. We were mentioning games a lot. We were mentioning cinema a lot, of course. And I just myself mentioned this in plural, as plural industries: the gaming industry, the cinema industry, the museum industry. Whereas I think it's all way more mixed and connected. And I think events such as this really also bring some space for thinking together about the digital challenges that we're facing across multiple organizations. I will not be using the term industries, organizations or infrastructures or spheres, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of cultural institutions and spaces and the industries that are linked with them, they're going through this moment of transformation, right? And I think traditionally we've divided our cultural institutions very much based on medium. Like, so if you wanted to borrow a book, you would go to the library. If you wanted to experience visual culture, you would go to a cinema, right? If you wanted to see a painting, you would have to go to a museum. And I think what we're seeing now is that all of these institutions are sort of trying to reimagine, well, what actually is our role in society as a public institution, right? Because people don't go to the library to look up something in an encyclopedia anymore, or indeed you don't need to go to the cinema to watch a movie because it's on Netflix. So I think we see them moving in different directions, right? And I don't think there is one right answer. It really depends on the type of institution, the scale, the site where you are, etc. So some are will be much more oriented on sort of building local communities around particular themes, right? Curating local communities and using visual culture or interactive things about that. Others may be more about organizing events and festivals and actually bringing people together, or building up cultural heritage together, or doing all that. Others may be more focusing on media production and educating also broader audiences, maybe also including maker labs or studios where people can learn how to design games, etc. And if you look at in Amsterdam, for instance, the cinema that we've worked with, Lab 111, it's actually a commercial cinema, although they show more art house movies. But the building that they are in is actually a hub for the visual industry. There is studios in there that produce not only traditional film documentaries, but also interactive pieces, online documentaries, online graphic novels. But they also have an institution called Lima that deals with the preservation of online media art and interactive spaces, right? So they create this local ecosystem of knowledge shared between those different companies around visual images, interactive images.
I think it's very interesting what you said, because you said it's a commercial cinema, right? And I think there's different levels to what the cinema is. And I think it's very interesting that in this group of people who are today all our panelists who are joining us, I think it's also very interesting that there's academics and there's academic institutions, there's public institutions, there's private institutions, there's NGOs. So I think these different structures are a big strength. But also when you were mentioning commercial cinema, my second thought was that, we're often making this distinction between commercial commercial, non-commercial, arthouse, non-arthouse, but also entertainment as something which is probably elsewhere than other spheres. And when you look at the structure of the, let me see if I can show you the slides, at the way that the connecting cinema is structured, there's like this 3 spheres. There's the one which is about connecting, that is there in the title, connect. But there's the second sphere, which is the sphere of engagement. And there's the third sphere, which is entertainment, right? And you're exploring these 3 curatorial or conceptual channels through this experience. So I would like to take this last 10 minutes remaining till the end of the panel to ask each of the panelists to comment and maybe tell me which of these 3 components, so connect, engage, and entertain, is something which you find especially relevant. How would you just rate them and why? So it will be like a super short speed dating, speed speaking session, but I would really like to see your multiple angles, given that you're coming from different institutions with different spaces. And maybe we could go just the way we started. So Clémentine, you go first.
I have the hardest part. No, so I was actually thinking about our 3 strands, and initially I thought I would not put entertain first because, you know, I'm French, and in the French way of thinking, entertainment is not art, it's something different. But actually I will put entertain first, because in the way we conceive it in our project, it's how we transform the cinema into a place of togetherness. And I think this is very much urgent today when we are slowly reopening, still under the threats of the virus. I think it's very important that we take this back, this place of togetherness, and then we can develop engagement strategies to be able to talk to all the communities that are on the territory, and then we can connect and share these experiences that we've put in place locally. So this is my take on the
Thank you.
strands.
Valeska, same or different?
Hi, I think it's harder to speak after you, Clement. I was thinking, because of the long-term isolation of people physically, mentally, and emotionally, and us talking about a lot of interaction, engagement, and connecting with digital means, I would like to stress the importance of engaging in the interaction between humans again, the connection to the humans around you and the human within you, and to maybe rediscover again that interaction between humans is very entertaining as well, because there is interaction between humans as well as between technology and humans, and it's important not to overlook that and get engaged in that again.
We're happy to be using technology also to engage with humans today. So, Mihai, do you think it's also engagement, entertainment, connection? What is the most important value or pillar for you?
So I will say that to connect, it's easier than ever nowadays. So I think it's more important to select to whom you connect. Entertainment is everywhere, but quality entertainment is difficult to produce and filter. So from my point of view, I will be in the same boat with Valeska. The most challenging part is the engagement of our audience. So this is the part I think it will use the most of our energy for the next years.
Okay, thank you. Martin, what do you think is the, yes, connect, entertain, or engage?
Behind engage stands engagement, and this for me is not a one way of our engaged audience. It's also the engagement of the cinemas towards the audience. So it's a two-way, and I would say that stays in the center because people are connected anyway, but just through a specific engagement, it comes to a new cultural sphere, a new development, and entertainment is, of course, only there. Playful things only happen where people are engaged and bring themselves in. So I would say engagement is a logical central term here, but all three are connected to each other.
And to cinemas. So, what do you think?
Well, this is of course an impossible question, right? Because they're all, I think they're all connected together. Our research group is called Civic Interaction Design, but that's a new name. Up until like half a year ago, we were called Play and Civic Media. And still, I think for us, playfulness, the entertainment value is actually a very important aspect of the engagement process. So yeah, I don't really want to choose between them. And I think they're equally important for the work that we are doing. And I also think for, yeah, cinemas taking up their new role.
Okay, thank you. I'm checking if we have any incoming questions from the audience. We have a few, we have 5 more minutes. So if any of you were wondering if you would like to ask this question, but were unsure if you would like to ask this question, this is a very good opportunity to take this last 5 minutes, because we have room for one more question. And if there's no incoming question, I may also have a question or a comment or a reflection to share with you. But I just wanted to give the space to anyone who might be listening to us. I see there's nothing coming in, at least for now. So I think we were having this conversation before with Martin, and we have like 3 more minutes. But I think it's very important to point that we are, because we've been talking all the time about how cinema is, you know, how this we've been talking about this tension about the interactivity versus cinema, whereas I think, or technology versus cinema or whatever. I mean, I think cinema from this very inception is a very interactive medium. It's something which came with no voice, so someone had to narrate it. So there was like a whole interactivity connected to cinema. So I think it would be nice to also make a point about this, and it's something that we've been discussing with Martin. So would you like to give us a couple of like thoughts about this in this last remaining 2 minutes? Because I think looking also in the perspective of history would be a nice way to end this conversation.
Okay, I mean, from the beginning of the cinematic culture, there was a question for how to combine elements, art, different kinds of art in that space. There were masters of musicians in our time at the cinema playing music to the film, and or then you have had these things coming out of the 50s, 60s in US to play with different senses in the cinema. You have had some smell and other things in the cinema. And this, until now, there are lots of different things to make the cinema more attractive while watching a movie. I think movies are, and you're completely right, are attractive enough. But what I think is that cinema films have been in the position of in a central position for the discourses and discussions in society as a cultural phenomenon and as a sphere. And now we have many discussions outside this sphere of the film. And I would say that the cinema itself can get again combined with these discourses and discussions in the film and outside the film as places of culture.
I would like to contribute to this with a quote which I have from Lev Manovich from The Language of New Media. And I think it sums up very well what we have been discussing. So 100 years after cinema's birth, cinematic ways of seeing the world, of structuring time, of narrating a story, of linking one experience to the next are being extended to become the basic ways in which computer users access and interact with all cultural data. In this way, the computer fulfills the promise of cinema as a visual Esperanto, which preoccupied many film artists and critics in the 1920s, from Griffin to Vertov. Indeed, millions of computer users communicate with each other through the same computer interface. And in contrast to cinema, where most of its users were able to understand cinematic language but not speak, all computers users can speak. It goes on and on and on, but I think this very idea of the agency that the computer brings back to us and of connecting us together, I think is very, very central. And well, I thank you for this and for this connection and for this panel, and see you again at the Media Architecture Biennale.